All right. So, in the big NBA news of the week, this is something that's kind of been brewing for a while. The Raptors kind of tearing their franchise down. Long gone are the days of 2019 and the days of Kawhi, where they're out here beating the Warriors and kind of ending the dynasty and sending the first ever NBA championship to Toronto. Those days are long gone. That started first with OG Anunoby to the Knicks, which we talked about in another segment, which you can find on our channel. Um, but this is probably the bigger of the two trades, the bigger player, which is Pascal Siakam. He is going to the Pacers. And that trade, the full trade details, I believe, are um, Siakam for Bruce Brown, Jordan Nwora, and 3 first-round picks. Now, obviously, it's a huge deal anytime a player like Siakam and that many picks are getting thrown around. Pretty NBA altering move. What do you like about this trade? What do you not like about this trade in terms of what it means for the Raptors and for the Pacers?
Um, well, that's not necessarily the way I was looking at it. So that would take me a second to collect my thoughts on that because I think it is a little. I think the Raptors got exactly what they were looking for. If we want to start on that side, I think, like you said, this isn't the Raptors team that we saw that beat the Warriors. I actually think it's kind of funny that we've seen that Warriors team has actually stuck around longer than the Raptors did. But
That's true.
like so it's been wild to watch this all unfold, but I think they made the right choice. I think you got as much for Siakam as you possibly could because I don't know if this is just me not paying enough attention, but it feels like he hasn't been as good as he was at during those like prime Raptors years, and I think you're taking advantage of and that could just be the hype around when he first started playing well in Toronto, but I don't know. At least to me, to my understanding of it, I think this is a good move. I think you're capitalizing on a player who is still considered a star, who's still fairly young, to my knowledge. I think getting 3 first-round picks for any player is a very good haul. You're getting another player in Bruce Brown, who's very, very, very serviceable. Has been a part of some very good teams. I believe he was on the Nuggets, if I remember correctly, and
Yeah.
he's been on some good teams. He's going to add a good presence to that locker room as well. I think that as for the Pacers, you're just adding another really solid player, and their team continues to get better. I think this Pacers team is starting to turn into a real juggernaut for the first time since when they had Paul George, and I'm all for it. I think it's always really cool whenever Indiana is a good team. I think they've got very, very. You wouldn't know it necessarily if you just looked at the landscape of the NFL, but I think they have very devoted fans, and I think it's cool whenever we get to see them just play at a high level. Like hopefully we'll start to get to. I think they have a very, very good team, and they have a chance to go very far in the East. So I'm excited to see that. I think Pascal Siakam. Obviously, from what I heard, he was disappointed to have to leave Toronto, but I can't imagine he's necessarily too sad with his destination. I don't know if he necessarily could have gone to a better place, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, it always seemed like a great fit. And I think for the Pacers, I am a little bit more on the side of the Pacers winning this trade. Because I do think it's exactly what you needed in terms of another star to pair with Halliburton. Because he's been playing out of his mind this season. And to give him another kind of star level player like Siakam, it really just elevates them from, I think, kind of the fringe level contender to a team that can actually make noise and go far in the playoffs, like you said. Um, it'll obviously take some time to build some chemistry, but I do think that's something that can be done. I think I think this is something because I'm not the biggest, my NBA fandom has always been I'll watch more NBA and I'll cheer really hard when the Supersonics eventually come back. But obviously, living in Canada, I'm a fringe Raptors fan. If I had to pick a team to cheer for, that would be what I'd pick. Um, so obviously, I'm take a little bit more interest in this than a lot of the other moves, and just reading some of the stuff around it, and then reading some more Raptors fan reactions. A good point was made is that the haul that the Raptors got. Well, you initially read it and you think 3 first-round picks. That's fantastic. You have to remember where in the first round they're going to be because they're coming
Yeah.
from Indiana.
Yeah,
who's going
for
to
sure.
be really good and is going to go deep in the playoffs. These are going to be late first round picks. And basketball isn't like football and isn't like football mostly, and hockey to a lesser extent, where you're going to be finding like great players in the end of the first round. It's a significantly lower hit rate. If you want to get very good in basketball, you're going to have those picks inside the top 10. And that's not what they're getting. So that's not exactly the best value. And I've heard that two of those picks are from the upcoming draft. And I know that that draft is not necessarily the best in terms of the talent that's available. So if you're the Raptors, you're going to hope you find a gem or two with those three picks, but it's not necessarily setting you up very well. Um, I do think it's probably the most you could have got for him. I know a lot of Raptors fans are upset he wasn't traded sooner, as in last year, to get a little bit more value for him. But I do think it's a pretty decent deal. But I do think the Pacers got the better end of it just because of the quality of player that Siakam is, and because those first round picks likely aren't going to be very high, so they probably weren't giving up that much anyways.
Yeah, and that side of things I do understand pretty well. Because I do agree with you. The first round picks aren't necessarily worth a lot. I just think that's as good of a haul as you were ever going to get for Siakam, for one, at least this season. I don't imagine if you send him anywhere else you're going to get anything different. And look at it like this. There's not really a prospect you could have gone for Siakam, in my opinion, that would be of value of those 3 first round picks you ended up getting. If you want to look at it like that you could have traded for him. So at the end of the day, at least to me, I look at it as you got what you were going to get. I think when trades like these happen, and usually the team that's trading away the star loses. That's how it works. And in this case, I don't necessarily disagree with you. The Pacers are winning. They did exactly what they needed to do. They traded away 3 picks that maybe aren't going to be worth a lot to them when they're contending for a guy who will help them contend even better. When you are in the position they are in, they did exactly what they're supposed to do. But that being said, I do think I don't think the Raptors necessarily lost the trade because of the fact that you got what you were going to get, right? Like if you're not going to be able to hold on to Siakam for your tank or for your just rebuild, this is what you were going to get for him. It was either this or you let him walk in free agency whenever his contract runs out, right? Like it's just you got I don't know. I'm just repeating what I said, but I that's my opinion on it at least.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think that it probably was the most you can get out of it. Um, so in that case, good job to Masai Ujiri or whoever's making the moves in Toronto now for pulling the strings on that, making that decision, and getting as much value as you possibly could for him. I do think you probably should have pulled the trigger on that early because I know the Raptors were not contending last year either. And you probably could have gotten a lot more for a guy like Siakam or even a newbie then. Um, but if I'm if I'm the Raptors fans, I think that's what I'm most upset about. Definitely going to be a pretty big rebuild. I know they're going to focus more around building around Scotty Barnes. Hopefully, they can get a good player with those draft picks to kind of pair with them and start that ground up rebuild. Because if you're looking at a guy like Barnes, that he's going to be pretty special. And I know it's been a little bit up and down since he won Rookie of the Year. I know he had a little bit of a slump and was kind of rebounded since, but he's shown absolutely the potential to be a star. And you probably want to rebuild pretty quick just to make sure he wants to stay around in Toronto. And I know there's been no indication that he doesn't. But you want to start rebuilding that core as quickly as you can, I think. And hopefully those first round picks help that. But I do think that if they had traded him a little bit earlier, maybe you could have pulled a little bit more, maybe pulled a prospect like you were talking about, Simon, to that has a little bit more value than those three very late first rounders.
Yep. Yeah, and I guess I agree with that as well. Like I agree with that sentiment. But I don't know if I have much left to add truly. I think it just comes down to 2 teams they got exactly what they both wanted. I think whether the Raptors could have gotten more if they traded him a year ago, that's at this point, what are you going to do about it, right? Like they got what they were going to get now. And I think that's more what I mean. I don't know if I'm a Raptors fan, don't know if I, and I'm not, but if I was, I don't think I'd be mad about it. I think, sure, you're upset that you're losing a guy who was part of your championship squad, and I understand that completely. But I think, as for the haul, you got a pretty decent haul. I think 3 first-round picks should, while it isn't as valuable as it is in the NHL, NFL, what have you, it is still valuable. There is still a reason they're there. And I think even if it is a weaker draft class, whenever you have those first-round picks, you are going to have a chance to get somebody special. And that's the risk you're taking. You are now getting 3 more chances to get someone special. And I think you got to look at it like that if you're a Raptors fan, at the very least.